We mentioned a lot about Mayweather and McGregor and just how everything went down as we welcome in the Executive VP, GM of Showtime Sports and Event Programming, Stephen Espinoza, kind enough to join me for a couple moments. How are you, Stephen?
I'm doing great, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we appreciate you making time. I know, I would imagine the last 24 to 48 hours, pretty hectic for you and chaotic.
Chaos.
Yeah,
yes,
but
chaos is the word.
Yeah, well, we're probably going to see a lot of that with the media tour. But I'm just wondering, share with me how this fight finally got finalized, and I'm curious, how close was this fight to not happening?
It's a funny thing. This is my suspicion. Floyd won't admit this, but this is my suspicion. You know, at a certain point, there was about a year ago a series of back and forth between the two of them, and it started as trash talk, and they're both world class level trash talkers. So it started as banter, bravado, and trash talking, and then my theory is. And we all sort of laughed, and it happens, in sports
Sure.
and particularly in combat sports. But at a certain point, the reaction from the public, there was so much sort of intrigue and curiosity and response that it at some point it was not anymore just a game. It wasn't just trash talking. There was, hey, there's actually something here. So I give Floyd credit because he persisted on it, and the attention kept building, and the curiosity kept building, and ultimately the demand kept building, so that when the negotiation actually happened, and it really started only 2 weeks ago, it was very, very quick because it was clear this was something that there was a tremendous amount of attention in. And it was a far greater opportunity than anything else Conor had in front of him in the UFC.
I'm wondering too. You mentioned the trash talking and how how it started, and knowing both sports respectively as well as I do. You look at a fighter in Conor McGregor, and I'm wondering. It seems he's McGregor to me the perfect match when it comes to his right personality, fighter recognition,
Yep.
branding, trash talker,
Yep.
self-promoter. So with that being said. To me, does this fight happen if it's any other MMA fighter?
No. It's a great point. Probably take any other boxer and any other MMA fighter. There's intrigue. Maybe there's some. The great thing about combat sports is they're perfect. Sort of fantasy talk. You can talk. This guy fighting that guy, different eras. Guys from different weight classes, and sometimes they actually come true. I think if it's not these two personalities, it's just fantasy talk. Well, what if John Jones decided he was going to box? What would happen? I think you've got two singular personalities. I know that's an oxymoron, but two outspoken guys, outsized, huge personalities. And that is as much of the reason this happened as the competition itself.
What's more interesting, too, is kind of piggyback your point a little further, as you mentioned the personalities and the recognizable faces in these two respectively. But you go back years ago, and there was talk of an Anderson Silva wanting to fight Roy Jones Jr., and that never transpired. And then, look, you blink. It takes a decade later, but you've got a fighter, arguably one of the greatest of our generation, five-time world division champ, lineal championships. We know the 15 world titles, twice as a welterweight, Floyd Mayweather. And then you get the upstart McGregor, who has shown that he is the face, if you want to use that expression, the face of the sport. And it's kind of funny how we thought this might have happened 10 years ago. And now you kind of get it with, look, those two, to be fair, maybe not as equally as, I don't want to say marketable or noticeable, but Roy Jones Jr., hell of a fighter back in his heyday. You know this. You're a boxing purist like I am. And then Anderson Silva was a heck of a fighter as well.
Yeah, and I think there's other circumstances. I think one of the reasons why I think this is not a gimme, and I'm not just selling, I don't think it's a gimme fight for Floyd, is age. If Floyd is in his prime, then I don't, it's a complete washout. I think the part of the uncertainty of this, part of the risk here is Floyd's been out of the ring 2 years. I don't know about you, but the difference between me and at 38 years old and me at 40 was a big difference.
Tougher to get out of bed in the morning.
Ways. Yeah. So that's part of, I think, what makes this happen is, yes, at his peak, we know Floyd was untouchable essentially. We've seen him become a little bit more mortal in his later fights.
Yep.
Marcos Maidana.
Yep. Yep.
That's a guy who, in his prime wouldn't have touched him. Now Floyd at 90% is still better than 99% of the fighters in history. But where is he now? Is he at 80%? Could something surprising happen? That's the intriguing thing here.
So just a couple things to reconfirm for the listening audience. So 10-ounce gloves, 154, which is McGregor's natural weight, 12 rounds. Was there ever talk of making it 10 rounds or 12 rounds? Because you know how it works right now. Right away, people are going to say McGregor's going to gas after 3 or 4 rounds.
Right. And I think this is where a little bit of ego came in. I think there really was no talk other than at 154, which is really Conor's pretty much his natural weight, and that's Floyd's ego saying, "Look, I don't want to hear people say, I shrunk him down and there were problems making the weight. So let him come in at a good, healthy weight." And the other way, I think the 12 rounds was Conor saying, everyone thinks I can't even go 10. Screw these guys. Like, I'll make it 12. I don't care. I'm going to knock him out anyway. So once you got it, you've got the two most arrogant in sort of externally, but confident internally. You'll see during the press tour, and you talk to Conor, he has literally zero doubt he's winning this fight. In the same way that Floyd almost showed disdain for opponents because he sort of like knows he's operating at a different level. Conor's the same way. He really truly believes he's winning this fight rather easily.
Which leads me into this, and again, a couple minutes with Showtime's Executive VP GM Sports and Event Programming, Stephen Espinoza. Rich Quinones here. Two things I am curious. Is there anything, and I don't know if you can disclose this information or not, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask. Is there anything that's written or down the road where we can see if by some grace of God, some miracle, McGregor beats Mayweather, where there's anything in the contract, there's a clause in the contract that says there's a rematch? There is not. So, the reality is it would Floyd doesn't have that protection. I think he's probably relying on the fact that I've always said, working with Floyd these last few years. I know where you're going with this.
The most interesting Mayweather fight is the one after he loses. So you think that would dwarf the revenue opportunity even of him going back to UFC. So I think that's probably what Floyd's relying on.
How about the price point on this? Because let's assume it's 100 to 125, and I think that's kind of the hot button topic with some people. And I go back from Pacquiao and Mayweather, where I'm sorry, I knew exactly what you were going to get for the price you're paying for that type of fight. Now, it seems as though a lot of the average Joes who might be big MMA fans want to watch this because they want to see Mayweather get clocked, and then some of the boxing fans might want to just throw a couple bucks and say, hey, let me see what I have here. I'm indifferent on the whole thing, to be totally honest and forthright. I'm indifferent because I told you, and you know this, I'm a boxing purist, but I respect the sport of MMA. But where do we see that price point? 100, 110, 125? I mean...
I would be, one of the things about the process of making this fight, it happened so quickly that we're a little behind on some of the issues. I'd be very surprised if we settled on a price that is any more than Mayweather Pacquiao. I think that is, look, you're getting a premium product. You don't go to the store and expect to buy steak and pay the same price as ground beef. But, I also think there's a psychological barrier there. You're going over $99, then you're going to get some kickback. So I'd be very surprised if there was anything, if it was anything over what Mayweather Pacquiao was.
Are you going to make? Listen, we know it's an event, right? I mean, and you know that it's not like someone's going to take it as a legitimate fight. Now you have legitimate athletes in there, no doubt, but. I'm curious, when you look at it from a broadcast standpoint, being on Showtime, you guys were able to obviously cultivate that and make it happen. So kudos and congrats on that. But are you going to partner up with any other, say like UFC, for instance, when they do the Fight Pass, and they also give you like the weigh-ins? They give you kind of those little cherries on the top, so to speak, where it's kind of like, I don't want to, what's the word I'm looking for? Not a bundle package or a la carte, but yeah.
It absolutely, and one of the interesting aspects of this is, unlike Mayweather Pacquiao, where we came in and for a variety of reasons, we had to combine with HBO and sort of do one production. You're going to get the best of both. UFC is going to continue to do all the good stuff that they do, included they have a great digital series called Embedded that they do, roughly the last 7-10 days. It's a daily digital series. They're going to continue to do that. Like, we're going to continue to do, All Access and cover both guys. So, you've got two organizations here. They're going to tell their stories and promote it, as exhaustively as they can, and we're going to do the same. So, we're going to really surround this thing, and you're going to see every moment live, whether it's the press tour or the press conferences or the weigh-in. There'll be multiple ways to get it.
Two more quickies for you, and again, I appreciate extended time with me. Look, again, we know it's a show, it's an event, nothing more, nothing less. I've had a ton of interaction with boxing and MMA fans over the last several days on social media, calling in and whatnot, just regular conversations. Since this was finalized, I think there are some that are into it, some that are not interested, some are waiting to see what the price point's going to be. Have you gotten any, and this might be a goofy question to ask, but have you gotten any type of pushback from some active fighters right now, especially some of those hot welterweights, some of those names that are thinking to themselves, man, this guy gets a crack at Floyd even though he's coming out of retirement. I wanted to prevent that 50th win.
There are plenty of guys. There's a long list of guys who wanted that Floyd. Yeah, exactly. But I think there's there's not many fighters that have this problem. But once you've done an event like a Mayweather Pacquiao, Sugar Ray said it best a long time ago. It's tough to get up and go run at 5 a.m. when you're sleeping on silk sheets. Now Floyd's work ethic isn't an issue. The question is, what's going to get him back in the gym? Like, what magnitude of event is going to say, look, I'll get off Instagram, I'll stop traveling the world, I'll get back into the gym. And I think it had to be something spectacular, a massive event. Yes, and with massive money, but really, I think just the scope and the stature and the magnitude of the event is what really brought him back.
Hey, listen, I don't know, you might disagree on this one with me, but if, again, by some random act of God, McGregor, Mayweather decides, let me give the people some of their money's worth and starts to engage, and say the southpaw catches him. Just say. I personally, I don't think it tarnishes his legacy at all. I don't.
Interesting. I think I definitely think so, particularly with somebody who's as loudmouth as Conor does. Maybe you could say, look, he came out of retirement and in all of this, but I know, Floyd, if
he's taking it serious.
At 49-1, and you've got to look at that one the rest of your life, it's really going to start chafing you.
And that's when the Marciano fans will come out of the woodwork too.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. But look, I realize there is some backlash, and look, I'm as much a boxing purist as anybody. But at a certain point, I mean, we're talking about two men punching each other in a ring for sport and money.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's tough to get too high up on our high horses and say, about the purism of the sport. Okay, this is guys punching each other for money. It will be a memorable event. No one can really predict what's going to happen, and it will be a spectacle. I mean, I can't think of many other things that I'd rather be doing on a Saturday night in August than watching that fight.
Yeah, no, and I'll leave with this. And you're right. You're right. At the end of the day, you're right. It is an event, and hopefully you get your money's worth. Listen, for those that sit there, and I can't stand the argument when they say, boxing is dead, blah, 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 and they can only reference the 70s. The Thurman Garcia fight, right? Obviously put on CBS.
Yep.
That's free TV. It was a hell of a fight. We've got some great fights going forward. I'm just hoping at the end of the day, the way this fight is going to be marketed more, hyped up, the press tour of the circus, I hope, and I don't know how much more action, but more than Mayweather-Pacquiao. Maybe Conor goes in there saying, I got nothing to lose, I'm going to force the issue, and I'm just going to start swinging.
Well, that's what I believe is exactly going to happen, and, the disadvantage of being, working with Floyd and having him be so dominant, so skilled, is you look at his two record-breaking fights, most recently Canelo and Pacquiao. Neither one of them was that thrilling, and he sort of got a point that both Canelo and Pacquiao seemed to get frustrated and really didn't go all out.
Right.
And they're just, I think that was largely, everyone can point fingers in the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, but I think the major source of disappointment was people thought Pacquiao would be a lot more aggressive and thought he would really push for it. And, you can say a lot of things about Conor, but lack of aggression is not one of his faults.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, you're talking to guys who are going to run their mouths and hopefully let their hands go. It should be interesting. August 26th. Stephen, I appreciate the extended time. I know how busy you are. Listen, it's done, right? It's done. Yep. So the bottom line is, at the end of the day, get the circus in town. Ringling Brothers, and then you guys have something to talk about and keep hyping. And we have something to talk about too.
Yeah, and it's something to talk about. And again, it's my view that fans appreciate the whole spectrum. So, we've got, a great young heavyweight in Anthony Joshua, who's going to be making the U.S. debut. You've got an Errol Spence, you've got a Keith Thurman. Yep. So there's a little something
you got superstars.
For everyone.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Stephen, I appreciate it. Really, I do. Hopefully we'll talk again before.
Anytime.
And we got another month or so. All right. Yep, you got it, Stephen. Okay. I appreciate it. Take care of yourself. All right, so there you have it. That comes from the horse's mouth, as they say.